You've also kind of mentioned moderation, which is really interesting. So with this anonymity and this community, I don't know if you've heard of the internet, but there's trolls on the internet.
So I've heard.
And even if they go to Yale and Dartmouth, there's still people that probably enjoy the sort of being the guerrilla warfare counter-revolutionary and just like creating chaos in a place of love. So how do you prevent chaos from and hatred breaking out in Librex?
So the way I think about it is we have these principles. They're pretty simple and they're pretty easy to enforce. And then beyond the principles, we have a set of moderators, moderated from every single Ivy League school, team of diverse moderators who enforce these principles, but not only enforce the principles, but kind of clue us in to what's happening in their community and how the real life context of their community translates to the Librex context of their community. And beyond that, we have conversation with them about the standards of the community. And we're constantly talking about what needs to be further elucidated and what needs to be tweaked. And we're in constant communication with the community. Now, if you want me to get into the principles that underlie Librex's moderation policy.
Yeah, please. Maybe you can explain that there's moderators. What does that mean? How are they chosen? And what are the principles under which they operate?
Sure. So how are the moderators chosen? The moderators are all volunteers. They're Librexers who reach out to me and respond to the opportunity to become moderator. And the way they're chosen is basically we want to make sure that they're in tune with their community. We want to make sure they come from diverse backgrounds, and we want to make sure that they sort of understand what the community is about. And then we ask them some questions about how they would deal with certain scenarios, ones that we've had in the past and we feel strongly about, and then also ones that are a little more murky, where we want to see that they're sort of thinking about these things in a critical way.
Yeah.
And from there, we choose a set, and they have the power to take down posts. Of course, everything at the end of the day pens my review, but they can take them down, and we can reinstate them if it's a problem. But they can take down posts, and they can advocate for different moderation standards and different moderation policies.
So for now, you're the Linus Torvald of this community, and so meaning like you're able to, like people are actually able to like email you or like text you, contact you, and get a response. Like you respond to basically everybody, and then you're like really, you're living that live on people's floor life currently. That's not necessarily. This is the early days, folks. I knew Ryan before
lovely?
He was a billionaire and he was cool. And then he was in a mansion making meats on his barbecue. No, okay. But, how does it scale? Like what... I suppose how does it scale is the question. I mean, with Linus, I don't know if you're familiar with the Linux open source community, but he still stayed at the top for a while. It was really important. Like leadership there was really important to drive that large scale, really productive open source community. What do you see your role as Librex grows, and in general, what are the mechanisms of scaling here for moderation?
The way I see it, open discourse is fundamental to the purpose of the app, right? So as the, I guess you could say, founder, CEO, what have you, part of my purpose has to be to enforce the vision, right? And part of the vision is open discourse. And that does come down in part to reasonable moderation and community-guided reasonable moderation. So I imagine that will always be something that I'm intimately involved with to some degree. Now, the degree to which, the way in which that manifests, I imagine will have to change, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully I'll be able to, just like you can hire a CTO, hopefully I'll be able to be integrated in hiring people who understand the way that we are sort of operating and the reasonable standards of moderation, and there can be a sort of hierarchical structure. But I think when you have a product whose key purpose is to allow people to have these difficult conversations on campus that need to be had,
that moderation is core to that. Yeah,
I can never fully I don't think I can fully ever abdicate that responsibility. I think that would be like, that would be like Bezos abdicating e-commerce, right? Right? Like
Yeah.
that's part of the job.
Yeah. Of course, you can run companies in different ways. I think that because he might have abdicated quite a bit of the
Possible.
details
It's
there.
hard for me to say. And
Because the Amazon does so many things. I think probably the better example is like Elon with rockets. He's still at the core.
with the engineering.
He is at the core of the engineering. There's some fundamental questions of what he probably does way too much of the engineering. Like he's like the lowest level detail. But you're saying like the core things that make the app work is the moderation of difficult conversations.
And by the way, I'm 21 years old. Let's remind everyone of that. If this thing does scale, and if this thing continues to be a positive force in a lot of people's lives, who knows what will happen in the next? What I'll learn. I'm still growing, definitely as a leader. Still growing as a thinker. Still growing as a person. I can't pretend that I know how to run a business that is worth, up to $1 billion, whatever.
Yeah.
I can't pretend I know how to run a business that's, going to have millions and millions of users. I expect that there are going to be a lot of amazing people who will teach me, and a lot of people who have already kind of stepped into my life and helped me out and taught me things. And I imagine that I'll learn so much more. I just know that moderation is always going to be important to me, because I don't think Librex is Librex unless we have open discourse and moderation. Reasonable, open, light touch moderation is at the heart of creating that, right?